Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, Crystal Stokes here, and I'm very excited to introduce you to a very interesting guest today. Her name's Dr. Laura Graye. She considers herself a humanitarian and visionary scientist, and she comes to us today with a very interesting background. You may be thinking, how does this apply to veterinary medicine? Well, she happens to have a Master's of Science in veterinary medicine, and from there, she's had a path that has taken her to receive a doctorate in natural medicine, a certificate in energy medicine, and also a PhD focused on consciousness and quantum medicine. So in addition to her clinical practice in Nashville and Boston, she's also the founder of Medigraytion, which is a boutique-style, online medical-style meditations, or practice that offers meditations online. I think I got that right. And today what we're going to be talking about are how the things that she has gathered from her rich experience as a clinician and her educational background, how that study of consciousness may apply to the veterinary profession. And so we're going to get into some of that today. And Dr. Graye, I would love it if you could introduce yourself a little more fully and start with telling us also about how you came to this point from studying veterinary science.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was younger, I was thinking, do I want to go to veterinary school? Do I want to go to medical school? And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But I had this vision because I used to telepathically communicate with my dogs. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be so amazing if I went to veterinary school and then what I did was I actually trained my dogs to search and rescue for like kidnapped or avalanche survivors. And so that's what I had wanted to do. And so I headed off to veterinary school it would take an entire podcast to explain why that ended up not happening. I just sort of decided that the clinical practice wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And so that's a shortened version. And, but it did give me a really good understanding of I spent probably a better part of 4 or 5 years working in veterinary clinics while I was going through college and thinking about applying to veterinary school. So I still really wanted to have that, touch my toe into veterinary medicine. So I applied and got into Tufts Veterinary School for the really unique Animals in Public Policy program that they were offering. It was their first year. And so I decided that I would go ahead and do that. And it was specifically about I approached it as I wanted to talk about the ethics of xenotransplantation and cloning, because it was right in the dolly, the sheep that had been cloned. So that really started me kind of like a tumbleweed. And as we get into the conversation, I'll explain more about my intuitive ability and things like that. But as I was trying to really understand the science of what was behind even our DNA and those things, that got me into veterinary medicine. And then I went on to get a doctorate in natural medicine. Then I got really deep into sort of the quantum world. So I went and got a certification in energy medicine, which took 3 years. And then a PhD. Well, that was going on along with the doctorate in natural medicine. They were sort of woven together in a program. And then I focused on consciousness, which really landed me where I was. But it was a full circle because the idea of empathically communicating with my dogs was identical. That is consciousness and knowing we're one and being able to tap into that communication.
What I really appreciate is that intuitive sense that kept navigating you along. Like you would have a sense of what you wanted to pursue, what interests you, and how you wanted to engage in the world. And you kind of move in that direction. You might bump up against something that wasn't the ideal fit. Like you thought about going the route of vet med, and you found out that the clinical practice of it just wasn't really for you. So you kept exploring different avenues and all along the way, kind of refining and zeroing in more and more on this topic today of like consciousness.
Yeah. And, I really, you hit the nail on the head, because when I was, one of the things that in that long traverse of whether I was going to go to veterinary school, one of the major intuitive hits I had was that I was originally applying to finish a post-bac to get into veterinary school at the University of Florida at Gainesville. And I don't know, this was 1980, and there, for those of you, I don't remember if anybody remembers, there was a small serial killer, meaning the numbers, luckily he was found before the numbers got into double digits. But as I was hearing about that and applying, there was something in my gut that just said, do not go there. And it turned out that the last two lives he took were in the complex that I was looking at potentially for an apartment. So, that has been a really, really big piece of, although it may look like I have sort of lived the life of a tumbleweed in many ways, that tumbleweed is really stitched into an intuitive knowing, which I wanted to understand better and help other people understand that better.
Oh, I think people listening today are thinking, I'd like to understand that better myself.
Yes.
What I find with the people that I work with in the veterinary profession is the majority are highly empathic individuals. They have an attunement. I think that's what makes them naturally so gifted in working with animals. And, with every strength comes its own shadow. And I think that also has the potential to create suffering, to be so empathic that we feel so deeply. That level of compassion fatigue we know is very high in the veterinary profession. So I think that the conversation today will be very applicable to people that experience their own sense of intuition. And so let's move into this kind of focusing in on the veterinary profession. I'd love to start extracting from you these nuggets of wisdom of how your educational background and your work as a clinician may apply to this audience.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it applies like tenfold or 100-fold. Just like you said, it's empathic group. And that's whether you are, in the front office or you are a veterinarian, it doesn't really matter. You have been energetically attracted to healthcare, and then also to healthcare to animals, which I think just has even a deeper empathy. And we're going to blend empathy and intuition. You've likely had the experience of just feeling deeply connected to animals. So I'm going to guess that maybe there are people in somewhere working at a veterinary hospital that aren't this way, but those who are listening and are attracted to your podcasts are going to be 100% that way. So with that assumption, we can start to really dig into what does that mean. Now, when, we've got a lot of things out there about empathy and intuition, but really what I do in my practice and what I do is look at it as on an energetic or vibrational sort of, how do you see that? What happens to your energy when you are empathic, and your energy as you see it, compassion fatigue, you get exhausted. And then, how does an empath or how does a highly intuitive person hold boundaries? And if the boundaries are leaking, then they are going to lose energy. And how do they come back to themselves and stitch themselves back in so that on a daily basis, they can be in service to what it is that they're here to do?
Can we do like an example perhaps? Because I'm thinking of somebody that I work with who, what I've witnessed in her is a pendulum swing back and forth. It's very taxing. So she's naturally an incredibly empathic helper-giver type. And she has a radar to read the room and know what everybody else needs, and a natural inclination to provide it. And so there's this, that side of the pendulum where it's very like full of generosity and wants to give and wants to listen and be there and support. Yet she's in a position where that's, when done to an extreme, it's just impossible to sustain. There's so many people that need so many things, and the ratio of output to input, it's not balanced enough to fill her back up. And I witnessed her pendulum then swing to this other side of becoming irritable, withdrawn, fragile, unconfident, anxious, and just this sense of a fear of I'm going to fail. I can't maintain this. If I can't do this into perpetuity, there's something wrong with me. And then she'll find out, like, from the isolation, there's some restoration that happens naturally. And then she gets the energy back and boom, she's back over here trying to support everybody again. I'd love to hear how you conceptualize a case like that and any practical tips you may give.
Yeah, and I love, it's almost like I said, don't use the word innate, and you use the word natural. And so I'm going to go back to you saying she has a natural proclivity toward giving and caring and things like that. And I'll differentiate someone who's got that natural tendency to an innate tendency. I think we can all look back and see where in our childhood we learned that there was a positive feedback from being helpful and being caring, and we got and gained personal value to probably a greater degree than it was our natural, or innate. So it may be created. We create a natural way of being that, but it was not innate in us. So you have a lot of people who get a sense of value and truly are kind and giving energies. However, caretaking may not be what you're really here to be. That's where all of a sudden, as you have gotten value for something that you gained points for energetically in your childhood, and it has been successful, like any behavior, you end up growing that and increasing it and increasing, and that muscle gets really big. And then the muscle of who you maybe are innately starts to atrophy a little bit more. And then there's an irritation. I'm not who I want to be. I am not, and anxiety at its base on an energetic level is a detachment from self. It is literally on the autonomic nervous system saying, you've got neurons that are connecting to other people that actually need to come back and connect to your own liver, to your own heart. Our central nervous system is a diagnostic tool. And so when we send and diagnose others by literally sending our neurons and reading the room and making sure that we know what's going on for every other person, those neurons have been allocated outside of ourselves, and we don't have the allocation to our own body. What is your body going to do if it can't read its own liver to the level that it needs to, or your digestive system and your vagus nerve is not bringing that information in? It is going to start to set off alarms, and that alarm can be experienced as anxiety. So then what do? You come back to yourself, you withdraw, you spend some time by yourself, you say, oh, I can't stand people in that way. I don't even know what's happening because I love them, but I can't stand them. You spend some time, you stitch yourself back, your nervous system comes back from that, sort of adrenal, and that adrenal can be, can go on for weeks. So that's what I would say about that case. And that a lot of, and I love it because so many therapists and psychiatrists are really getting down to the nervous system.
Oh, yeah. There's been a lot of interesting science. I mean, whether you're looking at, neuroscience or stuff that's more energetic, a lot of times what I notice in these conversations is we're all saying the same thing, just a slightly different vocabulary. So that's helpful and comforting. And I really love the model of listening in and being attuned to what is happening on the inside of us, whether those are thoughts or sensations or emotions, just to attend to it. I think that there tends to be a fear when I work with people who I'd say are on the spectrum of being a bit more driven. Like, I got to do things and get it done. I notice this fear that if I slow down and attend to what's going on the inside, by the way, somebody's coming in right now that helps me attend to my insides. Hello, little Hexie. This is just perfect timing, darling.
Totally.
So there's a fear there of slowing down, in quotes, like that it takes slowness and stillness and time to turn inward and to observe and attend to what's happening. That there's one, I don't have enough time for that. Two, if I become aware of what's going on, I'm going to fall into the abyss of darkness and never get back out. And then I'll fail to achieve or progress or be driven.
Well, and I'll jump in there and say, part of that is that when we are little and we're creating all of these neural pathways, what happens is if you are valued for and you get positive reinforcement, as we all did as children, for attuning or doing what someone else wants you to do, and you have memories of when I acted for myself or when I responded to a feeling for myself, I actually got in trouble. Yeah. I could have been reprimanded. So there's real wiring that says my memory is that when I acted, I would be called, don't be so selfish. Think about, share, all of these things that the 3 and 4, 5-year-old mind is taking in and trying to make efficient rules about, ends up being this like disaster. I want to start, instead of all the masterminds, I want to start one called the disaster mind. The Dr. Graye disaster mind, and coming up with the disasters that are in our unconscious, creating the kind of the disasters in our life until we can identify how we made that rule, how we made that belief.
Oh, yes. This stuff is so fun, isn't it? When I look back on my path, because mine was kind of circuitous like yours, of shifting from veterinary medicine to working with humans. And I am so appreciative now that I went that route, because I loved learning how to not believe our own thoughts, how to explore those thoughts and beliefs and create that alignment again with what serves us well, what feels true, and how do we move forward with that? I think our modalities are different, but I think the path forward is very similar. In my work, a lot of my work is around being an exposure therapist, which is essentially confronting a fear. So if I'm afraid that I'm going to turn into this mess of a human who will never accomplish anything again, I'll be lost in the feelings of all my emotions and darkness. Well, let's explore that fear. Let's face that fear. What if that did happen?
Right.
How would you manage that? But I love the process too of looking back and saying, where did I learn this? When did I subscribe to that newsletter that now I take as the gospel, that I believe to be true, that my worth and value is based on my achievements, or that if I'm not helping and giving everybody else, that I'm going to be abandoned. Yes. Okay. I digress. I mean, these things are,
it's you're giving me great, food for fodder for, or is it fodder for food? I never remember that saying. But one of the things that I think, that it's kind of like the way you have that exposure therapy. I think of it as, there's a small m mind and then the big M mind. And you have this small m mind that helps your brain create all these neural pathways. And that has been based on fear. You are 4 years old, 5 years old, and you're creating this map of how to make it through the world. And I think when you look and you see anything in your life, my big theory that I came out of consciousness is this self-manifested reality, which is that we recruit people, events, and circumstances. That includes anything going wrong in your job, people, event, and circumstances, to reflect for us that which we do to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I'd love, at some point in this, I'd love to do an example of one of those for you. But before we do that, the mind, capital M, is what's, really connected to consciousness. And I think the big piece that we forget on a daily basis, or can forget on a daily basis, is that our energy, all energy, is out there waiting for intelligence, waiting for instruction. And so that includes the energy in your mind, that your mind can literally instruct the energy in your life, and instruct the energy in your body, and instruct the energy in your psyche to move in a certain way. What we don't realize is that we've already instructed it. So we look at the world and we're like, who drew this map? And we don't realize that you can erase the map and re-instruct the energy of your life. And the way you look at where are the bad cartography pieces of your life are the ones that literally you go, this is something I don't want in my life. That's like key. I don't want that in my life. Great. I obviously created a map to bring me right there. Mm-hmm. And now I'd like to erase that map because I'm 30 years older than I was when I did that with crayons in my psyche. And how do I do that? And that's where the SMR comes in amazing, and some other tools that, how do you erase that map?
Oh, you got to so we'll definitely go next to the example that you're mentioning. I'll just share a personal one. I relate to that so much, of how I definitely created a map that was very burnout oriented. I think that just the way I was raised and the path that I had been on all the way up until I was about in my mid-20s, that's all I ever created. I just built everything around me to foster burnout. I'd work excessive hours. I would study in crazy amounts. I'd take extra classes. Why? I just had no other idea of how to live. But it was in grad school when I was studying to be a therapist, and we started to explore these things. I went, man, I don't think I really like this, like, to use your vocabulary, map that I have been following. So I built a new map. And I remember it being very scary at first to build a life that did not include burnout. Like, what would that look like? But I never went back, because as soon as I switched maps, I'm like, this is a wonderful map. The non-burnout map is lovely. And here I am, decade plus later, and I love it. So if you can share with people too, feel free.
Yeah, and I would bet if we went back and videotaped that part of your life, not only were you burnout mode, but that you had recruited people who expected burnout level delivery from you. Oh, yeah. And school and everything. And that's what I mean, that you it's awesome that you went, oh, I don't like this map. But most of the time people just go, I don't like that person in my life, or I don't like that circumstance. And it's when you look at that and you can take a granular view and say, what is that person doing to me? Are they being critical of me? Are they being judgmental of me? Are they not listening to me? Are they, all of those things. And then the sentence turns into, I am critical of myself. This person, I've brought them in to reflect that. I am not listening to myself. I am not, I am judging myself. I am creating this burnout that I now have asked everyone, hey, I'm going to recruit you. And I'm going to have you join with this part of me that I've already created in myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A way I like to say it with people I work with, I'm thinking especially of the first archetype that I mentioned, of the helper giver, which is the level of compassion and care that we give to ourselves is a limit of which we're going to be able to give to anybody else. So that means if we appear to be giving more and more to other people, it often comes with a string attached, like expecting the reciprocity or a bit of resentment. It's not purely given because we couldn't purely give to ourselves. And I find that kind of, like you're saying, the inner landscape can very much match what we create outside of ourselves.
Well, and also, for one certain type, yes, that's a yes to what you were saying, absolutely. And also, I think about how much pressure someone who feels that the outside world wants them to do and take care of and all of these things. So that one's unique and I've got a number of clients in my practice with that. And what I've got to do is, and this is a little bit trickier and deeper and a little bit more complicated, but then it's what in your unconscious, what part of you is screaming to be taken care of, that you're not taking care of. Because if there's someone out there demanding, if there's a pressure or a sense that you've got to get so much done, then there is likely somewhere in there that you are, and of course, that's exactly what it is. You're not taking care of a certain part of you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, beautifully said. So how about we move into the example you mentioned, and then I'm also just checking my notes here. Also talking about some of those specific tactics that you might recommend to improve the environment in veterinary medicine.
Yeah. So I think that, like I said, I think veterinary medicine, whether you're front desk or you are tech or, anyone, you are going to find yourself in pretty stressful situations, and stressful on top of emotional. So those things, and then you're empathic and you've got a lot of people coming in who, you first of all are empathic to the animals. They're likely a little bit nervous. So now you're reading that, and then their owners, if something's wrong with them, that is another stressful. So I think the most important piece that I would say is to ground into yourself. That would be something that if I were working at a veterinary clinic, the first thing that I would do before I walked in is just ground into myself, literally like stitch myself into my bones. Okay, I'm down, I'm in my bones. I've got 8, 10, 12-hour day that I need to stay connected to myself, because it's like the airplane, put the mask on yourself before you assist children. How do you stay connected and grounded and embodied in yourself? That would be the first thing. The second thing that I would do is I would, in moments that are getting really stressful, is say like, okay, I'm going to bookmark this to do the SMR. Later tonight when I'm driving home, I'm not going to sit here and do the SMR. Believe me, if it stresses you out, you're going to remember it. So then bookmark that SMR, and that SMR for everybody is, I have recruited then this person or this circumstance to reflect for me that which I do to myself in my unconscious. So just bookmark that. And then I think what is really, really helpful is another embodied experience, is just like a karate chop, tapping, or this, this is, even though I'm really stressed out, or a simple one that's hidden. So if you don't want to sit here and like tap your chest or karate chop, even though, I am really stressed out right now, I am calm and safe in my body. So that would be tactic number 3, grounding first, bookmark the SMR. 3 is tap and get yourself into the present moment. And then I find actually, which is why I started Medigraytion, while I was such an anxious little girl, I ended up knowing that if I could connect to my organs, like go in and just go, what is my liver doing? What is my stomach doing? What is, can I feel my vagus nerve? Can I feel my ribs? Whatever that is, that's a really grounded experience. And that's for like acute stressful situations. Chronic stressful situations are that you as a compassionate, empathic caregiver have got to actually first and foremost take care of yourself. This is healthy eating, healthy thoughts. We are looking at all our cells are vibrationally fed by not only the food we put into it, but the thoughts we put into it, unconscious and conscious, the feelings that are created through the chemistry of the thoughts. So be really just as attuned from toxic thoughts, toxic food, and know that all of that accumulates and will bring you to a lower vibration. I have started on the side a little Instagram, 333 actions to raise your vibration. And they were just things that, as I was, and I do think that people in veterinary medicine, maybe this is biased, have a higher level of consciousness, that they vibrate in this beautiful humanitarian way. And they understand compassion. And so with that, they are going to fall prey to getting pulled into the swamp of lower vibration. So what do? You live a life of higher vibration, and you invite people up to that higher vibration, not let me come down and, clean up in this swamp of low consciousness.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine people listening right now going, oh, yes, I can understand that. I deal with a lot of interpersonal conflict in the workplace, drama and gossip and mean clients and stuff like that can really bring a person's energy down and make the day feel really long and difficult. And so I think that you're speaking directly to how they could manage some of those difficult situations.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, just sort of being empowered with that you can rewrite this map. And it is just as simple as, and honestly, to anyone listening, send me an email with, hey, how can you explain this? And I will literally say, this is the SMR, that's it. This is how the self-manifested reality. This is what you created unconsciously. Don't feel badly about it. Just know that it got created. It's an old program.
Yes. Well, right now I'm looking at the clock and I go, wow, where did the time go? I think you could elaborate on these things and make this into multiple episodes. Yeah. For today, what I want to do and bring things to a close is to let people know what's the best way to reach you, to follow you, to find out more about the work that you do.
Sure. So I do have a clinical practice in Boston and Nashville, and that is, you can look that up on Laura Graye, and the Graye is spelled Graye, lauragraye.com. And then I have the Medigraytion, which is meditation, but with my last name in it. So if you type in Medigraytion, you can find that as a streaming online medical meditation for anxiety and immunity and hypothyroid and all different. It's set up like like the media player almost has the same kind of feel as iTunes, where you get a what's called an album, and you have a bunch. So there's an anxiety album, and there's an immune album, and there's a hypothyroid and a digestive album. And in each of these medigrations, in all of the different meditations that are in there, what I love is that they're physical and they change your physiology, but they also bring greater and deeper and higher consciousness and a real connection to your intuition.
Excellent. I will put all that in the show notes, everybody, so you don't have to go hunting for it. You can find Dr. Laura Graye that way. Dr. Graye, it's been a real honor to have you on the show today. I, again, really value your broad wealth of knowledge and how you can connect with the people of the veterinary community. You have that same connection to animals and the love of medicine, clearly. And yes. I really hope that people listening today will take in what you've said and explore it more deeply, because I know that some of these may be new concepts to some of our listeners. I think they're really powerful and worth looking into. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. And one last thing, I'm really serious. If you do want to explore this, please just send me an email. And if something's bothering you, just send it and I'll do the quick SMR.
Yes, please just take her invitation. She loves to connect. She's happy for you to reach out. So her email, everything will be linked up there, the website, everything that you need to find her and connect with her. So thanks again for being here, Dr. Graye.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this. It's a wonderful gift.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.